The night I was rushed to the hospital, clutching my side and barely breathing, my parents were boarding a plane to Greece. I remember calling my mother, the sound of waves and laughter behind her, as I begged her to stay, just for a few days, until doctors knew if my appendix would burst. She sighed, said they'd already paid for the trip, and hung up. The nurse beside me froze, pretending not to hear. The room went still, sterile lights humming above me like judgment. I stared at the ceiling, realizing money wasn't the issue, it was priorities. Mine never made the list. When I was wheeled into surgery, their vacation photos were already up online. Smiling faces. White beaches. And somewhere between the anesthesia and the cold betrayal, I decided, when they came back, they'd learn what it feels like to be left behind. Before we dive into the story, tell me in the comments which country you're watching this from. I love seeing how far these stories travel, and it helps me connect with you all around the world. I was 24, a second-year medical intern barely surviving 80-hour weeks, when my own body finally betrayed me. It started as a dull ache beneath my ribs around 9 p.m., a kind of twisting pain I thought was just exhaustion or bad cafeteria food. By midnight, I couldn't stand. My vision tunneled, and I remember gripping the bathroom sink as my knees gave way. The next few minutes were a blur of cold tiles, gasping breaths, and the distant sound of my roommate calling 911. By the time the ambulance doors slammed shut, I was drenched in sweat, half conscious. The paramedic kept asking about allergies. I kept asking them to call my parents. They lived only 2 hours away, in the suburbs outside the city. I thought they'd rush over immediately. But when my mother finally picked up, her voice was distant, muffled by wind and chatter. "Mom," I managed, "I'm in the hospital. The doctors think it's appendicitis. I might need surgery tonight." There was a pause, the kind that tells you everything before words even land. Then she sighed. "Sweetheart. We're boarding soon. We've planned this trip for months." My brain struggled to process the words. "You're at the airport? Your father and I are finally taking the cruise through the Greek Isles. We'll be gone for 2 weeks." The silence between us stretched thin. I could hear the boarding announcements in the background, her laughter mixing with someone else's, like my emergency was just background noise to her vacation soundtrack. "Mom, I could die," I whispered. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she said softly, the way she always did when she didn't want to feel anything. "You're in good hands. Call us after the operation, okay?" The line went dead before I could answer. The nurse standing near the bed looked at me, waiting for me to cry. But there was nothing left to come out. Just this numb, slow-burning realization that I wasn't even worth a rescheduled flight. The surgeon came in 10 minutes later. He spoke gently, explaining the risks, the rupture probability, the consent forms. I signed everything without reading. My hand was trembling, but not from fear, just anger trying to disguise itself as exhaustion. They wheeled me down a long, sterile corridor, the wheels squeaking against the linoleum. Every fluorescent light above me flickered like a pulse I couldn't match. Somewhere between consciousness and anesthesia, I heard the faint echo of an announcement from my phone, a photo notification from my parents' shared account. I glimpsed it briefly before the sedative took over, 2 glasses of champagne clinking mid-air, captioned, "Finally, our dream begins." When I woke up, my side burned like fire. The surgery was successful, the nurse said. I should have felt relief, but all I felt was hollow. No texts. No calls. Just a sterile white room with a beeping monitor that sounded too much like a clock ticking through my insignificance. Later that night, when the nurse brought in my dinner tray, she hesitated before setting it down. "Honey," she said quietly, "you should have someone here. No one deserves to go through surgery alone." I nodded, pretending I agreed. But inside, I was already rewriting something deeper than sympathy. Because I knew then, this wasn't just about surgery. This was the moment everything snapped into clarity. While they were posting seaside dinners and blue sky selfies, I'd start documenting something of my own. Every absence. Every lie wrapped in affection. Every decision they'd made that said I was optional. I didn't know it yet, but that hospital bed would become my planning desk. By the time they came home, I'd have something waiting for them, something that couldn't be ignored, postponed, or boarded over. And it would hurt more than any incision could. Morning bled slowly into the hospital room, cold light dripping through the blinds like a judgmental stare. My throat was dry, my lips cracked, but the silence was the thing that really suffocated me. Every sound seemed amplified, the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor, the shuffle of rubber soles outside, the metallic rattle of a breakfast cart passing by. The world kept moving while I lay there, stitched together, waiting for a message that never came. I checked my phone, 3 notifications. None from them. One was from the hospital billing department, confirming my insurance copay of $2,600. Another was a message from my roommate asking how I was holding up. The third. A photo. My parents, arm in arm, standing on a sunlit dock, holding fruity drinks. Caption, Day 1, finally free. I stared at it for a full minute, watching the digital confetti of likes rise beneath it. Family friends cheering them on. You deserve it. So happy for you too. No one asked where I was. No one even remembered I existed. I felt this strange, surgical kind of pain. It wasn't the incision, but the realization that maybe this wasn't new. Maybe I'd just been too loyal to see it before. I scrolled back through my old photos. My graduation, only Dad had come, and he'd spent most of the ceremony on a work call. My birthday last year, a gift card with no note. And then the memory I'd always defended them for, when I got pneumonia in college, and they couldn't make it because of an anniversary trip to Cancun. I'd told myself they deserved a break. That they worked hard. That they loved me, just in their own way. But now, staring at the stitched wound across my abdomen, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. Love doesn't clock out when it's inconvenient. The nurse from last night came back in to check my vitals. Her name tag read Ellen. She moved with this gentle precision, adjusting my scribbling notes on a clipboard. Any family visiting today? She asked casually. I forced a smile. There. Overseas. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Oh. Well. You're a strong one, aren't you? She meant it kindly, but it landed like a warning. Because being strong was never the goal, I just never had a choice. When she left, I reached for my phone again and opened my notes app. The first line I typed was simple. They left when I needed them most. I stared at it for a long time, the words glowing faintly against the screen. Then I started another list, dates, amounts, incidents. Every time they'd chosen themselves over me. Not out of bitterness, but out of precision. I needed to see it laid bare, like an autopsy of love. June 12, 2019, missed my graduation for a work emergency. October 5, 2020, didn't visit during pneumonia, trip to Cancun. May 3, 2023, forgot my birthday. Sent $50 gift card, no call. August 29, 2024, emergency appendectomy. Left for Greece. 4 entries. 4 wounds. And counting. By the third day in the hospital, the nurses knew me by name. The doctors signed off on my recovery. I could walk again, slow but steady. I watched families crowd into other rooms with flowers and laughter, and I wondered what that kind of uncomplicated love felt like. When the discharge nurse handed me the paperwork, she frowned slightly. There's a note here. Your parents called the billing office yesterday. They wanted to make sure your insurance covered everything. It was almost funny. They didn't ask if I lived, they just wanted to make sure they didn't owe a cent. That night, I took a taxi home. The city lights flickered against the car window like static. Every bump sent a dull ache through my side, but the pain felt like fuel. The kind that burns clean. When I opened the door to my apartment, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and stale coffee. My roommate had left a note on the counter, glad you're okay. Don't stress, focus on getting better. But I couldn't rest. Not yet. Not while they were out there laughing on yachts, telling stories about how proud they were of their doctor child, while I was learning what survival without them really meant. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and logged into our shared family cloud account. It was something my father had set up years ago, a way to keep memories organized. Photos, receipts, documents, all neatly labeled and synced across devices. I wasn't looking for anything specific. Just scrolling. Watching their lives unfold like a slideshow of indifference. Then something strange caught my eye, an uploaded document titled Tuition Payment, Reimbursement. Dated 2 months before. It listed my university, my name, and a refund amount of $48,000. But I'd never seen that money. Never received it. The file showed it had been deposited directly into my father's account. My heart began to pound, matching the beeping from the machines that had followed me home in my head. I read it again, then again, until the truth felt heavier than the incision in my stomach. They hadn't just left me. They'd been using me. The surgery might have saved my life, but what I just found was going to change it. The first bill hit my inbox at 6:12 a.m., the subject line chirpy and automated, explanation of benefits available. I opened it in the dim blue light of my bedroom, ribs tight against the elastic bandage. The numbers stacked like cold bricks. $14,870 for the surgeon's fee. $6,400 for anesthesia. $3,280 for the year suite, 1 hour, rounded up. $1,160 for imaging. Insurance carved at it like a cautious sculptor, shaving pieces but never the core. My portion after adjustments, $2,600 confirmed, plus an out-of-network consult flagged at $740 pending appeal. I scrolled line by line, noting the sanitized phrases, benign appendiceal pathology, emergent intervention recommended. It read like a story without a protagonist, and that was the point. I kept the EOB open and put my phone beside the keyboard. Then I reopened the family cloud. Their album had a new folder, Santorini Day 2. White roofs. Blue domes. My mother's dress catching sunlight like a net. My father captioned a photo from a cliffside restaurant, worth every penny. Underneath, a snapshot of a receipt in euros, the way tourists brag in numerals when words won't do. €218 for lunch, grilled octopus, assyrtiko, dessert stacked like architecture. Another picture showed a private sunset sail, the brochure price circled, €1,100 for two. Worth every penny. I clicked back to the document that had almost undone my stitches, tuition payment, reimbursement. It referenced a credit balance due to late posted academic award, processed to the original payer on file. The bank stamp was my father's. The note below, 2 sentences in administrative gray, said an email was sent to the contact of record before disbursement. The contact of record was not me. I dialed the university's student accounts line and braced for flutes of hold music. When a woman answered, calm, practiced, my voice surprised me by being steady. I introduced myself, spelled my last name, gave the graduation year. I didn't mention the hospital or Santorini. Just asked a question that sounded like paperwork but felt like surgery: where did my credit balance go? She pulled up the file. I heard the faint clicking of keys, a polite exhale. There was a scholarship posted retroactively for your final year, she said. A clinical service award through the hospital system, triggered after they verified your internship placement. It created an overpayment. We refunded $48,000 to the original payer. Which was? She hesitated, then read the name I already knew. Your father. I took it in like a slow injection. Was any notice sent to me? 2 emails, she said, apologetic now, but those bounced. They were redirected to the financial contact on file. It looks like your father updated the account years ago to list himself as the primary. Of course he did. My chest didn't rise so much as lock. Is there a record of the refund landing? Automated bank confirmation, yes. She softened. I'm sorry you're finding out like this. Me too. I hung up and let the room return, fridge hum, neighbor's footsteps, the soft ache of stitched flesh that keeps you honest. The facts were all in the open now. I wrote them down in my notes like a path you can walk without tripping. Retroactive clinical award posted after internship verification. Credit balance, $48,000. Refunded to original payer, not student. Contact updated years ago, by him. Emails routed away from me. While I typed, my parents posted another photo. Caldera behind them. My mother's caption: when you pour into yourselves, the world pours back. The irony scraped like gauze against an open wound. I switched apps and opened my hospital's patient portal, lab timestamps, nursing notes, the narcotic administration log. Everything dated, everything clean. I screenshotted the vitals graph from the hour my appendix yelled loud enough to be believed, temperature spiking, WBC count punching past the normal range. Facts don't love you, but they don't abandon you either. Rent was due in 9 days, $1,540. My savings after the last student loan payment? $3,200. If the appeal on the $740 failed, I'd have less than 2 months of cushion. Meanwhile, Santorini Day 3 bloomed onto the cloud, €4,200 for a suite upgrade, once in a lifetime, €260 for a couple's massage. We deserve it, the stingy 2 syllables they saved for me in every conversation I could remember. Later. I opened my email and drafted a message to the university account office, not furious, not pleading. Just measured, like a scalpel laid flat, requesting copies of communications related to refund disbursement, including dates, recipients, and any authorization logs indicating who changed the financial contact. I CC'd myself at 2 addresses and the hospital compliance inbox, just in case. I didn't send it yet. Sometimes you hold a match near the fuse and learn from the heat. Next, I pulled my credit report, free, clinical, unflinching. 3 hard inquiries in the last 5 years matched mine. No surprises. But buried under personal statements, a notation I hadn't written: primary financial support provided by parent during education period. It wasn't false, just crooked. The truth bent at an angle where it could cast the longest shadow. I scrolled their photos until my thumb cramped. In one, my father held up a tiny cup of thick coffee, his smile private, satisfied. The caption, "Finally learning to slow down." I thought of the night I'd called him from the ER. His voicemail had picked up after 2 rings, the custom greeting I'd heard since high school: leave it short. Leave it useful. I had. And then I'd stopped leaving anything at all. On my desk, receipts from the hospital pharmacy gathered like small, crumpled flags: $28 for stool softeners, $16 for gauze, $9 for tape. I laid them flat and took a photo that told its own quiet story. Money is a language, you just have to decide which dialect speaks the loudest. By noon, I could walk the hallway without leaning. I made coffee, burned it, drank it anyway. Then I drafted a second email, this one to my parents. Short. Useful. Surgery successful. Recovering at home. Please confirm receipt of this message. I didn't mention bills. I didn't mention $48,000. I wanted a baseline, a clean read on what silence really meant when nothing was asked of them. Evening settled like a bruise. My phone stayed still, no buzz, no glow. But the cloud account flickered again, a new upload feeding itself into the album, a drone shot of the sea, thin white wake behind a boat like handwriting on water. The caption said, "Never looking back." That, finally, was useful. People tell you who they are if you let them talk long enough. My job now was to gather the kind of listening that holds up in daylight: dates, amounts, routes. Not tantrum. Trail. I set an alarm for 7:30 a.m. and wrote one last line in my notes, a promise disguised as a reminder: tomorrow, call hospital philanthropy office about clinical award terms. Ask whether funds were intended for student or sponsor, and who defines each. I closed the laptop, the screen folding like a wound dressed properly. In the dark, the beeping from memory finally quieted. Not because I felt better, because I had somewhere to place the hurt. They could keep their sunsets. I was learning a different kind of light. You grow up believing some betrayals arrive suddenly, like accidents. But mine didn't. It was bred slowly, methodically, over years of polite neglect, disguised as independence. By the time I was old enough to name it, it already had my last name. After I found the $48,000 transfer, I started remembering things I had spent my whole life forgetting. Not the big moments, the absences. The small voids that stitched together to make a childhood. When I was 8, I broke my wrist during recess. I remember sitting on the curb outside the school nurse's office, watching the sky turn orange, waiting for someone to come. Mom arrived 3 hours late, sunglasses still on, Bluetooth in her ear. "You're fine," she said, barely glancing at the swollen bone. "You have a high pain tolerance." When I was 12, Dad missed my science fair because his client dinner ran long. I won first place. He told me later that it was great practice for disappointment. By 16, I stopped asking them to show up at all. I learned how to pack my own lunches, forge my own permission slips, and celebrate my own milestones. I thought that made me strong. But really, it just made me quiet. The irony was cruel. I'd gone into medicine to learn how to fix people. All the while, I was trying to understand why the people who made me never learned how to care. Now, sitting in my apartment surrounded by unpaid bills and hospital forms, I started to see it clearly: their indifference wasn't situational. It was inherited. A family heirloom passed down like fine china, polished with excuses. Dad had always said, "You can't depend on anyone but yourself." He said it like advice, but lived it like scripture. Mom followed his lead, orbiting his comfort like it was gravity. Their love wasn't warm, it was administrative. Scheduled, conditional, with emotional fine print you only saw once you signed. That realization wasn't freeing, it was surgical. Cold precision cutting through years of illusion. The next morning, I called the hospital's philanthropy office. The woman on the other end introduced herself as Clara. Her tone was formal, efficient. She asked for my name, date of birth, and department. I gave her everything. "I'm calling about the clinical service award process through the university," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I just want to confirm, who was the intended recipient?" A pause. Then typing. "The student intern, always," she said. "The award is designed to offset medical education costs and provide transition funding for early residency." So the recipient was supposed to be me. Correct. And if the funds were returned to a parent, that would be a breach of policy, she said carefully. Unless the parent had legal guardianship, which wouldn't apply once the student is over 18. I let the silence hang just long enough for her to hear it. Would you like us to open an audit? Yes, I said, steady as stone. Please do. When the call ended, I sat there for a long time, listening to my own breathing, realizing how simple justice can sound when you strip away emotion. Just a line item being corrected. But I didn't want correction. I wanted exposure. That night, I scrolled through their social media again. The latest upload, mom in a linen dress, standing on a white balcony, the caption, grateful every day. It wasn't cruelty, it was ignorance dressed in sunlight. The next post was a boomerang clip, dad toasting a wine glass. The caption said, life rewards those who choose themselves. That line stuck with me like a splinter. I stared at it until the words blurred, then I whispered it out loud, testing the weight of it, twisting it into something useful. Because I realized something, they'd taught me exactly what I needed to know. How to choose myself. Just differently. I printed everything I had, screenshots, refund records, tuition statements, the university's confirmation email. I placed them into a folder, labeling it Documentation, 2024. Clean, clinical, detached. Just like they'd raised me. But I also started collecting something else. Memories. Testimonies. The kind of emotional evidence no lawyer could quantify but no conscience could outrun. Mom canceling every birthday for budget reasons. Dad taking a loan in my name for credit building. The time they forgot to pick me up from the airport, then blamed traffic. The tuition refund they pocketed while I was unconscious under hospital lights. Patterns don't lie. 3 days later, Clara from the hospital emailed again. Initial audit confirms funds were dispersed to the wrong recipient. Further investigation ongoing. Please provide any related correspondence from your end. I forwarded everything, every screenshot, every timestamp. Then I did something I'd never done before, I CC'd my parents. No message. No context. Just attachments. For the first time, silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. By midnight, I saw that they'd opened the email. Twice. No reply. But a new upload appeared on their cloud drive. Title, Account Summary, Do Not Share. They still thought secrecy was protection. They still thought I'd play the obedient child. They didn't understand that obedience is just trust that hasn't seen the bill yet. I wasn't looking for apology anymore. I was building something far quieter, and far sharper. An inheritance they'd never expect. The folder sat on my desk like a patient file, neat, silent, ready to speak when needed. Inside it were the printed screenshots, the audit email, the EOB, and a fresh set of notes from my last call with the hospital. I handled it like a specimen. Everything in order. No emotion leaking through. Because if I'd learned anything from medicine, it was that chaos is just an unorganized diagnosis. But that morning, I wasn't a doctor in training. I was an investigator. And my family was the case. I started mapping out the timeline, drawing lines and arrows across the page. Every decision they'd made that left me smaller than before. The tuition refund was just the latest incision, deep, clean, deliberate. I'd spent years telling myself they didn't know better, that their love was just quiet. But what I had now wasn't silence, it was data. And data doesn't lie. I opened the family cloud again, digging into folders I'd never paid attention to before, old tax documents, shared budgets, scanned receipts. My father had always been the self-appointed finance guy. He loved spreadsheets, compound interest, optimizing every expense. When I was younger, I thought it was impressive. Now, I saw it for what it was, control disguised as responsibility. The deeper I went, the more patterns surfaced. They'd claimed me as a dependent for 5 years straight, after I turned 18. Every year, they'd pocketed extra deductions meant for education expenses. One file showed my old scholarship statements, annotated by my father in red digital ink, retain documentation for filing. Retain, not share. Retain, not inform. Retain, like keeping what was never his. I copied everything to a new encrypted drive. I renamed it for audit, personal use. Then I added a password that even they couldn't guess, August 29, the night they left me. That evening, Clara from the hospital called again. Her voice was cautious but clear. The finance office confirmed your report, she said. They're escalating it to compliance. It looks like the funds were misdirected into a personal account. We're obligated to notify the IRS, as well as the university's grant board. I felt the air leave my lungs. Slowly. Cleanly. Will my parents be contacted? Yes. Standard procedure. You'll receive a copy of the correspondence once it's issued. I thanked her, hung up, and sat perfectly still. The kind of stillness you feel before a storm. For the first time in my life, accountability was no longer something I begged for, it was paperwork. The next day, I started getting fragments of movement. An email from the university finance department confirming that initiated a return and reconciliation process. Another from the hospital's compliance division requesting supporting communication logs. I sent everything. Then I waited. I didn't tell anyone, not my friends, not my roommate. It wasn't pride that kept me silent. It was precision. Secrets lose power when you talk too early. Meanwhile, my parents' online life continued as if nothing had cracked beneath them. New uploads every morning. Now in Crete. A picture of them holding hands in front of a seaside chapel. Caption: Love built on trust. Trust. The word sat like a splinter under my tongue. By the 5th day, I received the official notice from the university, digital letterhead, polite apology, confirmation that the improper disbursement had been flagged for external review. It mentioned the phrase potential fraudulent misrepresentation of beneficiary information. That phrase alone could gut a reputation if it landed in the right inbox. I didn't have to touch them anymore. The truth would do that for me. Still, I wanted to see it unfold. So I opened a new email draft and began writing, not to the authorities, not to the school. To them. Subject: Audit Notice. Dear Mom and Dad. I wanted you to hear it from me before you get the notice from the hospital and university. They've confirmed the refund wasn't supposed to go to you. I didn't report it out of spite. I reported it because it was mine. I don't need explanations or apologies. I just need acknowledgement that you made a choice, and that choice had consequences. When I was on the operating table, I thought I might die. I wondered if it would make you come home sooner. Now I know it wouldn't have. Enjoy what's left of your vacation. The emails will reach you before you land. No threats. No rage. Just information. Cold. Measured. Final. I hovered over send for a full minute. Then I clicked. It was 11:42 p.m. My apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint hiss of the city outside. I stood there, watching my outbox refresh, feeling the smallest tremor of something I hadn't felt in years. Not revenge. Not even relief. Control. The next morning, the hospital's compliance team sent me a carbon copy of the formal notification letter addressed to my parents. The first line read: We have identified a discrepancy involving educational disbursement funds totaling $48,000. $48,000. Please be advised that restitution may be required. There it was, justice, notarized. But this was only the beginning. Paper trails don't just record what happened, they predict what's coming. And what was coming would make them wish they'd missed that flight. I wasn't planning to find it that night. I was just trying to sleep. But insomnia has a way of digging where it shouldn't, especially when your brain still hums with the aftertaste of justice. I got up around 2 a.m., made tea I didn't drink, and opened my laptop again. The glow lit the folder marked for audit, personal use, and I clicked through almost absently: university records, insurance forms, hospital discharge summaries. Each one neat, complete. And then one file caught my eye, something I didn't remember saving: parent consent for financial authorization. It was dated 3 years ago. At first, it looked harmless: standard formatting, my university's logo, a header about permission to discuss financial matters with a parent or guardian. I skimmed it, bored, until I reached the bottom. There it was. A signature. My name, written in the deliberate, cursive style I never used. I stared at it so long my vision went grainy. The loop of the L, the curl of the R, it was close, too close. But it wasn't mine. Whoever signed it hadn't even tried to mimic my real handwriting, they just traced the idea of it. And below it, in a second signature line, was my father's, bold, sharp, perfectly confident. The document granted him full access to academic and financial records, including authorization to make updates or act on behalf of the student as needed. That single forged page had given him everything he needed to reroute the $48,000 and cover his tracks. For a moment, I just sat there, letting the reality settle over me like dust. My parents hadn't just taken money. They'd fabricated my consent to do it. The betrayal was so surgical it almost impressed me. Almost. When the adrenaline hit, I started pulling threads. I checked the metadata on the file: date created, last modified, and IP trace. The system recorded the upload as originating not from my address or the university's, but from their home network. The same address listed on my old FAFSA forms. The timestamp? The night before my final year's tuition deadline. They hadn't stumbled into theft, they'd planned it. I opened my old email archives next, scrolling through university correspondence from that same week. And there it was, a message from the financial aid office saying, "Thank you for providing updated authorization documentation. Your records have been amended." I'd never seen that email before because it hadn't come to me. It had gone to their inbox. That's when I remembered something my mother once said, offhand, over dinner, during a rare night we'd all eaten together. "We handle things for you because you're too busy," she'd said, smiling. "You should thank us for making your life easier," and I had thanked her. Every time. I leaned back in my chair, pressing the heels of my hands against my eyes. It wasn't the forgery that broke me, it was how easily I believed in their care. That it had ever existed. By dawn, I was done crying. I scanned the forged document and attached it to the ongoing audit thread with Clara and the compliance team. The subject line was short: additional evidence, forged authorization. Within hours, her reply came. Received. This significantly escalates the case. Please do not contact the involved parties further while formal notification proceeds. You may be contacted by University Legal Counsel to provide a sworn statement. Sworn statement. The words hit me with both fear and satisfaction. I wasn't just the neglected child anymore, I was the complainant. At noon, my father called. His number flashed on my screen like an old scar reopening. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered. His voice was taut, low, all performance. "We need to talk." "About what?" "You know damn well about what. We got a notice this morning, something about a refund audit and misrepresentation. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I almost laughed. "What I've done?" "Your mother is in tears. You've embarrassed us. These things can ruin reputations." I could hear waves in the background. He was still abroad. Still enjoying paradise while his empire cracked. "You forged my signature," I said quietly. "You took money that didn't belong to you." His silence stretched like a blade. "Then, we did what we had to. You're ungrateful. After everything we paid for." "You didn't pay," I interrupted. My voice came out colder than I intended. "The hospital did. The university did. You just collected." He exhaled through his teeth. "You think you're smarter than us now, don't you? That little internship has gone to your head." I didn't answer. "Listen to me," he said. "Withdraw your complaint before it gets messy. They'll believe this was all a misunderstanding if you stop now." I waited until he was done speaking, then said, "You taught me that life rewards those who choose themselves. I'm just taking your advice." Then I hung up. 10 minutes later, a notification appeared in the shared cloud account, parent consent form, removed by user. They deleted the evidence. Or thought they had. I smiled, slow and quiet. Because I'd already backed it up 3 different ways. 2 days later, I received an email from the university's legal office confirming receipt of the forged form. They were launching a formal fraud investigation. I was to provide a written statement, followed by an interview. The letter was careful, professional, detached, but one line burned into me. If the signature is proven falsified, the responsible party may be subject to restitution, disciplinary action, or referral for criminal prosecution. They'd always told me to focus on my future. I just never realized it would be at the cost of theirs. And as I reread that line, I knew exactly what I'd do next. I wouldn't just expose them. I'd make sure their names became synonymous with the betrayal they built. The email from the university legal office went out at 9:02 a.m. Athens time. According to the read receipts, both of my parents opened it within 7 minutes. According to their cloud uploads, they checked into the airport 20 minutes later. They were coming home. I'd imagined this moment for days, the confrontation, the silence, the collapse of everything they'd pretended to build, but when I saw the first notification from the airline app, I didn't feel triumph. I felt stillness. Like a lab before an experiment begins. Everything was ready. Everything was documented. And the results were already inevitable. By then, I'd received confirmation from the university that the forgery was verifiable and material. The refund had been frozen, the audit complete. The institution was seeking full restitution from the unauthorized recipient. That's what they called my father. Unauthorized recipient. The perfect euphemism for what he'd always been, entitled to everything but me. Their flight landed at 3:18 p.m. I knew because their shared location pinged near the arrivals terminal. Old habits, family tracking app, set up years ago when I was a teenager. They probably forgot I still had access. I waited. At 5:11 p.m., my phone buzzed. My mother. Text only. We're home. We need to talk immediately. This is serious. 5 minutes later. Please answer your father's call. We can fix this. There it was, the first we in months. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my email and sent the final set of documents to the university's council, screenshots, call transcripts, and the hospital's compliance letter. Everything backed by time, date, and chain of custody. When I pressed send, my computer hummed, and for the first time since the operation, I felt my pulse slow to something almost normal. At 6:04 p.m., the doorbell rang. I didn't need to check the peephole. I knew the rhythm of that knock, measured, impatient, commanding. My father. I opened the door halfway. They stood there still sunburned, still dressed in vacation white. My mother clutched her purse like a lifeline. My father's jaw was tight enough to splinter teeth. Can we come in? He said. You shouldn't, I answered. The investigation advises no contact. He pushed the door anyway. Don't be ridiculous. This is family. The word hit me like static. Family. A word they'd used like a shield. My mother's voice wavered. Honey, we didn't mean for it to go this far. It was just. Money? I finished. Just $48,000 that wasn't yours? Her eyes filled instantly. I almost pitied her. Almost. My father dropped the act first. You think you're clever, going behind our backs to those bureaucrats? Do you even realize what you've done? That was our money. We paid for your life. I took a step back, keeping my voice even. You forged my name. You rerouted university funds. That's not parenting. That's fraud. He scoffed. You're twisting this. We just moved the money temporarily. It was safer with us. Safer than in my account? He didn't answer. The silence stretched long enough for the truth to sit between us, heavy and unflinching. Finally, my mother whispered, we can pay it back. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I don't need repayment, I said. I need acknowledgement. My father's tone hardened. You'll regret this. I already did, I said quietly. Years ago. That broke whatever composure my mother had left. She reached for my hand, but I stepped aside. Her fingers brushed air. The movement was small, almost invisible, but I saw something change in her face. The recognition that she had finally lost the version of me that still needed her. My father exhaled, looked around my apartment, bare walls, one lamp, the stack of hospital bills on the counter. You think this is victory? You think destroying your family over a technicality will make you happy? I met his stare, level. No. But it'll make it fair. He turned and left first, his footsteps loud and deliberate down the hall. My mother hesitated, then followed, her voice barely audible as the elevator doors closed. We were just trying to do what was best for you. I closed the door and locked it. Minutes later, my email pinged again, an automatic copy of the university's updated case file. The header read. Notification of pending restitution, recipient contacted and acknowledged. Acknowledged. That single word was more closure than any apology could ever give. I looked out the window as dusk fell, the city humming below like a heart that refused to stop beating. They were somewhere out there, probably arguing in silence, trying to decide whether to fight or surrender. It didn't matter. The truth was in motion now. Paper trails don't vanish, they replicate. And as the first stars blinked through the haze, I felt something shift inside me, not peace exactly, but purpose. They taught me to survive without them. Now, I was teaching them how that feels. Their return flight had brought them home. But home was gone. It started quietly, just an email. One line from the university's compliance team. Per policy, this case will now move to public record as part of the institutional audit summary. Public record. 2 words that could strip away a lifetime of curated perfection. For a week, I heard nothing from them. No calls. No messages. Just silence. The kind that hums in your bones. I imagined them pacing the house, refreshing inboxes, waiting for the fallout. My father, staring at his laptop, muttering about lawyers and procedural overreach. My mother, pretending to cook, pretending not to cry. But I didn't imagine for long, because the exposure didn't stop at the university. 3 days later, an investigative reporter from a local paper reached out. She'd found my audit filing through the university's transparency board. Her message was simple. I'm working on a piece about educational fund misappropriation. You're listed as the reporting student. Would you be willing to speak anonymously? I sat there, rereading the email until my reflection blurred on the screen. Anonymous. Safe. Clinical. Just facts. But facts weren't enough anymore. Not after years of erasure. I wrote back, yes, I'll talk. But not anonymously. Her name was Rachel Lynn, a freelance journalist who'd made a career out of writing quiet exposés, the kind that didn't scream scandal but left reputations in ruins. We met at a cafe near the hospital where I worked. She wore no makeup, no perfume, just the sharp confidence of someone who listens more than she speaks. She clicked on her recorder. Start from the beginning, she said. So I did. I told her about the surgery, the call, the laughter through the phone. The cloud folders. The forged signature. The $48,000 refund. The audit. The silence. Every sentence felt like suturing an old wound shut with wire. She didn't interrupt. Didn't gasp. Just nodded and asked for dates, for amounts, for verifiable sequence. She wanted the trail, not the tears. When I finished, she said quietly, they sound methodical. They are, I said. That's what makes it worse. Do you have documentation? I slid the folder across the table. Everything. The look on her face told me she didn't expect this level of order. She flipped through the pages, emails, bank confirmations, audit reports, screenshots of the forged form, even the university's official statement. When she closed it, her expression had changed from empathy to something sharper. This isn't just family drama, she said. This is financial fraud tied to institutional disbursements. It's a case study in abuse of trust. Exactly. She nodded once. If I run this story, it'll have names. Are you ready for that? I didn't hesitate. They taught me not to flinch. The article went live 2 weeks later. Headline: Parents pocket $48,000 scholarship refund while child undergoes emergency surgery, university launches investigation. My name was there. So were theirs. The story spread faster than I expected. Local outlets picked it up, then national ones. Social media did the rest. My parents' photos, those same glossy vacation smiles from Santorini, were now plastered under headlines about fraud and family betrayal. The irony wasn't lost on me. The internet had a taste for poetic justice. The fallout was instant. My father's company issued a statement calling it a private misunderstanding, but investors didn't buy it. Within 48 hours, his name was quietly removed from the leadership page. My mother deleted her social media accounts, but screenshots never die. Meanwhile, Rachel's inbox flooded with tips from other former students who'd discovered similar errors in their accounts. My case became a template, a reference in policy meetings, compliance reforms, even ethics seminars. But the real moment of exposure didn't come from the headlines. It came from the silence afterward. One evening, about a week after the story broke, I checked my voicemail. There was one new message. My mother's voice, fragile, distant. We didn't think you'd really do it. Your father. He's not taking it well. He says you've ruined us. I just wanted you to know, we never meant to hurt you. We thought we were protecting you. Protecting me. From what? Honesty? Independence? Accountability? I deleted the message. Because the truth was, they weren't protecting me. They were protecting the illusion that they were good parents. That everything they'd done was out of love, not greed. But the world had finally seen the ledger. By the end of the week, the university announced a new verification protocol for all educational disbursements. The hospital's philanthropic board issued a press release citing a misuse of institutional trust as the catalyst for reform. I was no longer just a victim. I was a case number that changed policy. Still, late at night, when the notifications slowed and the adrenaline faded, I'd sit in the dark, wondering if justice ever truly feels like victory. Or if it just feels like exhaustion with better lighting. The exposure had done what it needed to do. Their names were stained, their story rewritten. But I wasn't done. Because exposure wasn't the ending, it was the mirror. And soon, I'd make them stand in front of it. Justice doesn't arrive with fanfare. It comes in envelopes. Formal language. Phrases like notice of determination and restitution agreement enclosed. The morning it arrived, I didn't feel anything, no satisfaction, no vindication. Just a clean, surgical calm, the same feeling I get before making the first incision in an operating room. The letter was from the Office of Institutional Compliance, printed on heavy paper. My father's name appeared twice, once under respondent, and again under responsible party. The amount due, $48,000, plus $3,200 in administrative restitution penalties. They had 30 days to repay the funds or face legal referral. They didn't. Instead, my father hired a lawyer, one of those men who speaks in tempered arrogance, who believes paperwork is just a form of negotiation. He sent me an email through his assistant, dripping with condescension disguised as diplomacy. Our clients, Robert and Elaine Carter, wish to resolve this matter privately. They assert that no fraudulent intent existed and that the funds were temporarily redirected for safekeeping. We request that you withdraw public and institutional complaints to allow family reconciliation. Family reconciliation. The words almost made me laugh. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to the university's counsel and copied the journalist, Rachel Lynn. It wasn't revenge, it was documentation. Every lie, every plea, every attempt to rewrite the narrative would be preserved like tissue under a microscope. Within 48 hours, the university's legal team sent their reply directly to his attorney. It was clinical and final. This matter is not subject to private resolution. The institution maintains full jurisdiction under federal reporting standards. Further interference may constitute obstruction of compliance proceedings. I read that line 3 times. Further interference may constitute obstruction. For the first time, someone other than me was protecting the truth. The next week brought silence again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one belonged to them. Through whispers from family friends, I learned my father's consulting firm had suspended him pending review. Clients had withdrawn contracts. His spotless online reputation, years of curated professionalism, was unraveling thread by thread. My mother had retreated entirely, hiding behind the house's drawn curtains, ignoring calls from neighbors asking if the rumors were true. And yet, none of it felt like victory. Because justice isn't loud. It's the absence of excuses. It's the empty inbox where manipulation used to live. Still, part of me needed to see it, to make sure it was real, so I did something I hadn't done since before the operation. I went home. The house looked smaller, like it had exhaled. Paint peeling. Garden unkempt. I stood outside for a full minute before knocking. My mother opened the door, her eyes hollow, her hair pulled back carelessly. She looked older, years older than she should have. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Neither should that forged signature," I replied. Her lip trembled. "We've lost everything. The firm, our savings, your father's reputation." "You lost those things," I said quietly. "You didn't lose me. That happened a long time ago." From the hallway behind her, I heard his voice. Still deep. Still sharp. "Let her in," he said. I stepped inside. The living room was the same, polished furniture, framed diplomas, the scent of lemon cleaner trying to cover decay. He sat on the couch in a pressed shirt, pretending control. "Come to gloat?" he asked. "No," I said. "To confirm." He scoffed. "Confirm what? That you've humiliated your family for a story? That you understand what you did?" He leaned forward, eyes narrow. "We gave you everything. You wouldn't even be where you are without us." I nodded slowly. "You're right. I learned from you. I learned how to take what I need. The difference is, I didn't steal it." For a second, the mask cracked. Just a flicker of disbelief, then anger. "You're ungrateful," he spat. "We made sacrifices." "You sacrificed me," I said. "Piece by piece. One forgotten moment at a time. Until there was nothing left to take but money." My mother started to cry, softly at first, then uncontrollably. My father just sat there, jaw clenched, knuckles white. "I didn't come to fight," I said. "I came to tell you something." He didn't answer. "The investigation's done. You're legally bound to repay the funds. But that's not why I'm here." I took a breath. "I'm transferring the money to a medical scholarship fund, for students who don't have family support. It'll carry your names. Every year, they'll read about how it started, with parents who thought their child's trust was alone." My mother looked up, stunned. My father went pale. "That's cruelty," he said finally. "No," I said. "That's legacy." I turned to leave. My mother reached out, her fingers trembling. "We just wanted you to need us." "I did," I said. "Once." Then I walked out. The air outside was cold, clear. The kind of cold that doesn't numb, it cleans. I stood on the sidewalk, the wind catching my coat, and realized that justice doesn't feel like revenge or triumph. It feels sterile. Sharp. Necessary. Like anesthesia before the cut. The wound is still there, but it's no longer bleeding. Months have passed since the letter, since the confrontation, since the final door closed. The story, as far as the world is concerned, is over. The article is archived. The investigation completed. The university issued its final statement, formal, emotionless, filed neatly in an online database beside a dozen other compliance cases. My parents' names sit there in black and white. Permanent. But stories like this never end. They just change form. The silence afterward has a sound. It's not quiet. It's the low hum of something rebuilding itself. My life is smaller now, stripped of the illusion that blood guarantees loyalty. But it's mine. The first version that isn't borrowed from their expectations. I still work the night shift at the hospital. Sometimes, when I pass through the recovery ward, I see people lying there with the same look I must have had that night, the dazed confusion of realizing you're not as loved as you thought. I check their IVs, adjust their blankets, say things I wish someone had said to me. You're safe now. You're not alone. I've learned that justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet continuity, the simple act of not letting the wound define you. A few weeks ago, I got a letter from the university. Inside was a formal notice that the scholarship fund had been approved, the Robert and Elaine Carter Medical Resilience Grant. The irony made me smile. Each year, one student in crisis will receive $48,000 in aid. And every time someone reads the name on that plaque, they'll remember how it started. My parents haven't contacted me since the confrontation. Not once. No apologies. No explanations. Just the same avoidance they practiced all their lives, only now, it costs them something measurable. Sometimes I think about calling them, just to see if they'd answer. Then I remember the phone ringing in that hospital room, the laughter on the other end, the sound of waves instead of worry. And I decide the silence says enough. I did hear, through a former neighbor, that my father sold the house. My mother's living with her sister now, somewhere by the coast. The irony isn't lost on me, how they finally found the solitude they always seemed to chase. Maybe they even believe they deserve peace. Maybe, in some strange way, they do. People rarely see themselves as villains in their own stories. But I've stopped carrying the weight of that. Their choices are no longer mine to manage. The night I deposited the first donation into the scholarship account, I sat on the hospital's rooftop, watching the city lights blink like heart monitors. I thought about that hospital bed, the sterile light, the cold betrayal, and how something inside me died that night, but something else was born in its place. Not vengeance. Not resentment. Just clarity. I used to think justice was about punishment. About making someone feel what you felt. But it's not. Justice is what happens when the truth finally breathes on its own. When you stop shouting and just let the evidence speak. Now, when people ask me why I chose medicine, I don't tell them the full story. I just say, because healing is cleaner than revenge. But deep down, I know the truth. The incision that changed my life wasn't the one on my body. It was the one I made when I cut them out of it. And the scar it left, cold, quiet, deliberate, is the truest mark of justice I'll ever carry. Some wounds never fully close. But sometimes. They don't have to.